Welcome everybody to our cold climate fruit production webinar series. My name is Amaya Tucha and I will be today's webinar moderator. Today we'll be discussing advancing cold climate grapes, research innovations and breeding updates from the University of Minnesota with Dr. Soon Lee Tai. Dr. Soon Lee Tai is an assistant professor and director of the grape breeding at the University of Minnesota. He has a three-way appointment of research extension and teaching. He teaches the Vines and Wines course during the fall semester. So he also knows quite a bit about wines, not only grape breeding. And his program focuses on breeding interspecific grapes for cold hardiness, fruit qualities, and disease/pest resistance. We're super excited to have him with us today. So please join me on welcoming Soon Lee. Thank you for making the time for this webinar.
Thank you, Amaya. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for taking your time for this session of the webinar. I am really honored to be able to give this presentation. I just want to give this quick disclaimer that I am not currently in my office as I was going between multiple meetings back to back. And so I'm just finding a spot that I think is somewhat quiet, but I just heard some construction sound. So please bear with me. So let me just go today, the gist of my presentation is really going to be talking about some of the cold hardiness work that we're doing here at UC Minnesota, focusing on grapes, which is my primary crop of interest. So as Amaya mentioned, I'm an assistant professor. I'm a grape breeding director at the University of Minnesota. I have a three-way appointment split, research extension and teaching. And with that, I'll jump to the next slide. As most of you can appreciate, in the Midwest, there's a lot of challenges with growing various type of crops, and grapes is one of them. And these challenges really rooted a lot in how cold it gets in the wintertime. And going beyond how cold it gets in the wintertime, we know that climatic aberrations with how the fluctuations of the temperatures can also make it really tricky when it comes to the early fall season, where we are susceptible to any frost events, and then also in the late springs, there's also a lot of risk in terms of getting a spring frost. And in the Midwest, we also have a relatively shorter growing season compared to, say, California. And so that's also a risk that we have. And then and another thing is that a lot of the common pathogens or pests actually naturally co-evolve with these in this environment. So we also have a lot of challenges dealing with different pathogens and diseases. And this is just an example of photos that I took last year. And we in the Midwest, particularly in Minnesota and Wisconsin, we were hit with a lot of rain last year. And so we had just an absurd amount of a load of pathogens. And so we saw a lot of downy mildew, black rot, phylloxera, and also some of the common stuff like powdery mildew and anthracnose and so on. And so because of these important challenges, this really shapes the heart of the breeding targets. And so at the program here at University of Minnesota Grape Breeding Program, our focus really can be distilled down to two primary most important targets. One is cold hardiness. Obviously, we want to breed material that can survive the cold in the upper Midwest. And then second of all, even if they can survive the cold hardiness, we also want to make sure that they still can possess excellent fruit and flavor quality that eventually can be imparted in the wine itself. And so these are, I would say, the two most important characteristics that we target. And then along with that, of course, we breed for disease resistance, pest resistance, lower acidity, and then perfect flowers. And these are important targets for us to have. And then my program is about 3/4 of them is geared in wine grape breeding, and then about 1/4 in table grape breeding. So I also have an interest in fresh eating table grapes. And the targets for fresh eating table grapes would be seedlessness, eating quality, unique flavors, and then appearance, and also increased shelf life or storage potentials in this regard. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of my program itself, just sort of programmatically. I oversee a 12-acre operations at the Horticulture Research Center out here at Chaska. And we tend to have about 10,000 to 15,000 vines at any single point in time. And we tend to put in about 3,000 to 5,000 vines every year. And about the same number of vines are being taken out every year because of rigorous evaluations that we do every year. And once we start seeing the best among the big lots, then we start making more replicates of it, and we'll test those replicates, and so we see whether their performance continue to improve or not, and or is it just a fluke year. And when we see the best of the best continue to come up, that's when we start making more and more intentional selections to move them towards the commercialization stage. Just one more slide, and I want to highlight the impact of the grape breeding program. The University of Minnesota actually has a long history in grape breeding, dating over 125 years ago. And we've released 13 cohort varieties that have shaped the entire landscape of the upper Midwest. For example, it's given birth to an entire new industry, such as the one in Minnesota, in North and South Dakotas, and Montana, Vermont, and so on, and also in regions, some regions in Canada. And we know that the Minnesota grape and wine industry was last rated in 2015 to be around $80 million of an industry, but I believe currently it's probably around $100 million of its industry size. And the program has been recognized both on a national and international levels for its impact. And now I want to switch gear to talk about, with all these things that we're doing at the University of Minnesota Grape Breeding Program, a lot of it really relies on the adoption and continuation of important technologies. And one of the most important technologies that have been the driving force in my program has been the use of genomic tools and DNA technologies. And for instance, now with the decrease in price and also the increased precision and resolution in sequencing, it really allow us to do a lot of new things. One of the main thing that we were able to do is to do a marker trait association, which is essentially a fancy term to say that we are trying to understand regions in the DNA that we can associate with variations for a particular trait. And you can think of the trait as a disease resistance, or you can think of a trait as fruit color, tannin content, and so on. And we're really trying to understand whether or not the variation that we see in that particular phenotype can be explained in which region in the DNA itself. And this particular example is this particular concept is actually illustrated here in an example here. For example, there are 6 individuals going down the rows, and there are 6 DNA markers that you see here going across the columns. And now for the infection levels, you just imagine that as a particular phenotype. In this particular instance, you can think of that as a disease itself. And now we're just trying to do an association. And here we are really seeing that markers 1, 2, 3, and 4 are associated with a disease itself. And then marker 5 and 6 are really not indicative of anything. So for us, this example would showcase that markers 1, 2, 3, and 4 are really helpful for our breeding progress. And this is what we call DNA-informed breeding. And you can really loosely think of us developing these tools as really developing a 23andMe version for grapes. We are really trying to understand how we can use these tools to guide our breeding decisions, which is a concept called DNA-informed breeding. And this DNA-informed breeding really captures a wider range of applications in my program. First is it helps us to simplistically just validate any of the parental or cultivar identity that we have in the vineyard, because sometimes labels can be lost, or some of the individuals that have been kept for a long time. We want to verify whether or not those individuals are exactly identical, or are they different from what we see on the labels or another individuals that have been added to the program. And then second and third are probably the more important point, which is that we really need to focus on trying to choose the best parents to do our crosses. And these parents can be parents that are complementary in the different traits, so that we can combine the different desirable traits together. And then finally, we can use these DNA markers to actually help us select for individuals in the offspring that have the favorable combination of those genetic copies. And then on the flip side, we can use DNA marker information to help us to discard individuals that do not have our favorable genetic copies combination. And as you can imagine, this can be really helpful, particularly when it comes to applying on a fruit quality traits, so that we don't have to spend 3 to 5 years waiting for the fruit to develop. And we can confidently remove those individuals based on DNA markers information. But I want to emphasize that it's really critical before we can get to that stage where we can confidently remove individuals based on DNA marker information. We really must first do the marker trait association stage, that the example that I demonstrated in the previous slide. So that stage is a really critical and time-consuming stage, because we need to really make sure that we have the statistical power to make those decisions. And we need to understand the traits really well and how it correlates with on a DNA level. And the second important effort in the program that has been a major driver is a national collaborative project that was procured by my predecessor, Dr. Matt Clark. And this is a Virus Gen 3 project that is focusing really on powdery mildew resistance itself, really trying to understand how we can get genes on the shelf to sticks in the ground. And sticks in the ground will really be the vines itself, will really be the final product, the wine itself. And here on the left-hand side is just a shortened code of what the objectives are, like genes on the shelf, tools on the toolbox, sticks in the ground, and grapes on the table. And then the description on the right-hand side is really a more technical descriptions of what the particular project is. And in this particular national collaborative project, I am really focusing quite a lot in one of the objectives, which is objective number 2, and where we are really utilizing vineyard imaging to help us do phenotyping. And this is really automated imaging itself that we allow us to do a few things, such as evaluating traits, looking at various different traits, such as diseases, berry colors, cluster size, and then also some of the viticultural traits like wood ripening and also internal length. And the idea here is that we would actually fasten this high-speed camera and light strobe at the back of a gator, and then driving the gator down about 2 miles an hour, which is quite a difficult thing to do. And then as the gator drives 2 miles an hour down the vineyard, these high-speed camera and light strobes are constantly capturing a ton of photos. And then we would then actually have to collect phenotypic data. I'm sorry, I don't know if you can hear this. We would then have to collect those phenotypic data, and we would then make the connection between the photos that was taken and the information that we collect. And let me just give you a let me just run the video real quickly, and you can see that that's the gator running down the vineyard. And obviously this is more speed up version. And here, the sort of premise here is that if we can do this successfully at a reasonable accuracy, it can really help us to do genetic analysis, and it also help us to update our breeding records, use this as a method to collect data. Another project that my other graduate student is working on is developing a screening protocol for cohardiness selections. As I prefaced in one of my earlier slides, cohardiness was one of the most important traits in my target in my program. And so my student here, Douglas Vine, is actually working on developing a screening protocols to help the program find a quantitative and standardized measure that we can screen our breeding selections, so that we can understand how the vines going through the acclimation season during late fall leading into the winter time, and then how they deacclimate as the weather gets warmer, and then how they maintain their cohardiness profile in the winter time. And so this is a project that my student just collected the second year's worth of data. It'll be really interesting to see how this would eventually guide my program in developing this screening protocol. And one thing that I'm really, really fortunate is also that a national collaboration that we do with Amaya Atucha, and this is a collaboration called CoSnap collaboration, where the idea is to develop an online bud cohardiness prediction model. This is obviously utilizing a lot of the common varieties that are planted across the different states here, and this would actually help growers make informed decisions when it comes to preparing them for the winter conditions. And So this is an effort that we collaborate with Amaya and various other collaborators here. And another area that we collaborate on a national level is the pre-commercialization trawling of elite selections. As you can appreciate, it takes a long time to breed a successful variety. And for the eventual variety, we want to make sure that these eventual varieties will really serve the different regions so that growers who adopt these varieties, they can be successful in their planting. And one of the areas that we do this is that we actually start collaborating with industry partners and university researchers across the different states so that these different researchers in the different states can start collecting data that's relevant for these potential selections that may be released in the near future. And so that when these selections become a released varieties, they would already have informations that are known and collected that they can inform the stakeholders on how to care for the vines and how to be successful in planting and growing and managing and producing good wine out of it. And now I want to switch gear to talk about something that are really near and dear to my heart, which is table grapes. And we have three promising table grapes that are on the pipeline. Two of them will be released this year. So I'm really excited to share this with you. And these are really, really compelling because what we have in the existing landscape for cold hardy table grapes is that there is actually no industry for cold climate table grapes at all. And in fact, during the late summer and fall season, 100% of the grapes that we get at the grocery stores come from California alone. And right now, the grapes are mostly coming from the Southern Hemisphere. But we really believe that there is a room for creating a new industry for cold hardy table grapes. And the existing ones, they are mostly seeded or they are multi-purpose, what we call multi-purpose grapes used for fresh eating, juices, jellies, and I believe that most of them actually have mediocre flavors currently until the one that we are about to release. And we're currently in the early stage of the naming process. So right now I'm only just describing them as a single letter, that's easy for you to reference. The R refers to red, the B refers to black, and then the G refers to green. And you can imagine this is RGB, and this kind of is the RGB color gamut, sort of covers the whole thing. That's just a joke. And so we have our red grapes, for example, seedless, with minimal seed trace, and then it has minimal disease incidence. It's high yielding, has dense canopy. If you've tasted Somerset seedless and you taste this, you would appreciate that this is really quite an improved version of Somerset seedless. It's fruity. Has a really nice strawberry flavor. I really, really enjoy it. And the next one is the grape G. It's also seedless with a minor seed trace, quite indiscernible when you put it in your mouth. It has also, once again, minimal disease incidence. It's highly aromatic. It's tropical flavors. One of the things that we really enjoy about this is that during the harvest season, even if you are we are multiple rows away from this particular vine, you can really be drawn by the scent. It really draws you in to lead you into where this vine is located. And we believe that of the three, this has the strongest market potential. We can harvest it over a 3 to 4 year period if you want, especially if you think about doing it as a farmer's market type of operation. You can store 3 to 4 weeks. Last year, the weather was really, really bad with a lot of the rains, and we were even managed to store them for 6 weeks, no problem. And this is the one that's under provisional patent. And then the final one is quite a unique one. It's a black grapes. It's most tart compared to the other two. It's also seedless, once again, with a minimal seed trace. It has minimal diseases, once again. It has a slightly thicker skin, which is not as common in our regular fresh eating table grapes. It has a unique flavor because it is a little bit more tart. So some people like it, some people may not quite like it. But one of the things that is quite compelling with this grape B is that it's actually potentially suitable to do for processing. So you think of it as putting it into like a big muffins or any frozen smoothie, that type of a meal replacement type of setup. And that can potentially carve a way for mechanical harvesting. And grapes is also under provisional patent right now. I'm really excited to tell this that this year at the Minnesota State Fair, we would actually be bringing all these three grapes at the Minnesota State Fair, just so we can gauge the real consumers feedback from the over 2 million foot traffic that we will attract. So I'm really excited for what this holds in the data that we'll collect. And in addition to all this fun stuff that we do in breeding and trying to connect with the prospective consumers, we are also doing some active research work on this. I've been really fortunate to get 2 grants funded for this work, and both of them we have already begun doing the work. And on the left-hand side, we've already collected a full year's worth of data, trying to understand the effect of chemicals on berry size, fruit qualities, and also various aspects of fruit quality and chemistry itself. And then on the right-hand side, we'll be testing market interest, as I mentioned, Minnesota State Fair, but we'll also be doing it at a farmer's market and also at a intermediate food hub. We'll also be identifying, processing, and freezing solutions, particularly for the black grape, because we want to know how can we actually move the black grapes in a more sort of processing solutions. And finally, because the black grapes does look like a blueberry, we're trying to also evaluate some of the nutritional benefits to see whether or not there are any nutraceutical properties associated with black grapes. Maybe give a run for the money for blueberries. Now I want to switch gear out of table grapes and now move back to the wine grapes. Some of you who may be thinking about getting your feet into planting wine grapes. I just want to share with you a couple of our newest releases of the wine grapes. One is Itasca that was released in 2017. It has excellent cold hardiness. Among our suite of individuals that we've released, we believe this is actually the most cold hardy. It actually survived the 2014 and 2019 polar vortices, even better than our sort of previous king of winter survivor, Frontenac Gris. Itasca is actually a fairly disease and pest resistant variety. It's actually from year to year, it's actually quite clean of a vine, has a moderate to high vigor. So that can be challenging if you have a really high nutrient soil, but if you don't have, that may not be something that you need to think about of a concern. It's an excellent fruit quality. It just tastes amazing. Not only the fruit itself, but also when you mix into a wine itself. One of the things that really stands out with Itasca is that you get this really nice fruit quality and fruit chemistry, and it doesn't get tacked on with the high acidity. It actually has a really low and respectable acidity that is a more vinifera type acidity. Generally for us in a program is normally around 7, 8, or 9 grams per liter of acidity. And it has a really nice wine notes of kiwi, starfruit, gooseberry, pear, quince, and honeydew melon. It's really a nice white wine variety. And then follow up is Clarion. Clarion is our newest release, and it was released in 2022. Believe it or not, the initial crossing was actually made 30 years prior, made in 1992. But we hadn't released for a long time, even though it has always scored really well, because for a long time, we always appreciated the fact that, yes, this wine tastes really good, but it's not suitable for planting in Minnesota, at least for most part of Minnesota. But we actually released so much accolades and also pressure from our other stakeholders that says, hey, yeah, we know it's not suitable for Minnesota, but hey, please release it so we can grow it in our different regions. And so we actually released it in 2022. And this, once again, is a pretty clean vines. We can get somewhat susceptible to powdery mildew, but other than that, in terms of downy mildew, it's actually quite resistant. Clarion is actually my favorite wine to drink in the summertime, in the hot summertime, because it has a really unique, subtle and light aromatic wine profile. A lot of people have commented that Clarion really tastes like a subtle version of Sauvignon Blanc, and I agree. And I've even students from my class that take commented that, oh, this tastes like Sauvignon Blanc, and others says that this tastes like Pinot Grigio. I think it's more like a Sauvignon Blanc. And then once again, the wine notes are really, really quite astounding. You can taste pear, honey, chamomile, citrus, and so on. And with that, what is on the pipeline for us in terms of wine grapes? There's a particular wine grape selection that has caught my attention. Right now, I don't have anything to disclose. It's something that I'm working towards in the next 3 to 5 years, planning on releasing a red grape variety. But one thing that had caught my mind is this particular selection that has the delayed bud break, which is a really good characteristics of to consider for people in the upper Midwest, because of the spring frost events that can be quite devastating for the flower and the fruit development. And so and beyond the fact that this has delayed bud break, what I really like about it is it has really high quality wine. Um, I- I've been in my program in this position for a year and a half. I've gone through 2 rounds of wine evaluation. In both times, I scored really, really high on my list and also on my breeding crew's list. And prior to that, it has also been tasted many times and has also scored really well among us. So this is really quite a promising one. I can't say for certainty this is the one that we release, but right now it's really high on my list. And so I just want to put it out here just as for you to be thinking about and hopefully excited about. And with that, I know that, in my program, it's a really complicated operations. It's not something that I can do by myself. I'm really blessed to be surrounded by a lot of highly capable staff. I have my winemaker, Drew Horton. I have my vineyard manager, John Tu, and then I have a whole suite of personnel, including graduate students that are really capable. And so with that, this is my last slide. I just want you to note my email, just so that if you have anything, please feel free to email me to reach out to me. I don't know who will be the final audience for this particular webinar, but if you're a researcher, I'm open to research collaboration. And if you're growers or you're winemakers, I'm interested in any sort of grower partnership or any sort of winemaker type of partnership. So with that, how am I doing time-wise? I'll be happy to take any questions if this is the setup for it. And if not, remember that my email is th@umn.edu. Email me if you have anything and look at my program website. With that, thank you so much for your attention. And please pardon me for the construction sound just now. Thank you so much.
We didn't hear anything, so don't worry about it. It was
Oh,
very
okay.
smooth. Thank you so much for that presentation. That was a great overview of the program. I'm really excited about the potential new releases, especially for the table grades. I didn't know that it was going to happen so soon. I'm gonna put in the chat a link to where we will be posting the recordings of this webinar, and I'm also just going to, open it up if people have questions. You can, paste it just type it in the chat, and I can read it and ask it. That works well. So if people have questions, now is the time. I'm just gonna start because I do actually have some questions. So for the seedless table grapes.
Yep.
And when do you think that those will become commercially available? When would somebody that's interested in actually growing them, not doing research, but they would be able to go to a nursery and purchase some of these vines?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we actually already have at least 2 nurseries that have this material with them. But right now they can just hold them and make more of it for us in terms of research activities. But when it comes to the eventual, but once the release has fully approved, then we'll actually start telling them that they can actually start taking this information that we have and just put it on the nursery websites and start really making sales of it. And the same thing goes with our test growers that have been planting there. I think we have now 5 or 6 test growers in Minnesota and 4 in Wisconsin. And same thing goes to them. Once the process is fully approved and has gone through, then they can actually start selling it. So, for example, if we get an approval all done in August, they can even start selling their fruit in August and in September. So we really want we know that there's no industry right now, and we want to
Mhm.
really encourage this to happen more on a grassroots and natural progression, really allowing people to really expand and also go from there pretty much
Yeah,
uninhibited, as long as the patent process has already fully gone through. And
that's
Amaya,
great.
that's actually a really good question, because I it reminds me to actually get people to think about and suggest some names that we can be potentially put to this, because we really want the names to reflect either Minnesota or Upper Midwest. Just really something that is not something that's like too fancy names. We want people to know that, hey, this is really something that has a really humble beginning, but we believe there's a lot of room to grow from here.
That's perfect. Also, just I love that you pointed out that in the state fair you will have some of those grapes for people to taste. We have had in the past 2 years some field days here in Madison where we have some of these selections, and people have attended and they've tested the fruit. So if you are an attendee and you're thinking about table grapes, seedless table grapes, just keep an eye for either the Minnesota State Fair, or if we have a field day here in the West Madison research station, and we also have these seedless table grapes at the PARS research station up in Door County. So I think those vines are a little bit younger, so I don't know if they will have fruit this year, but surely there will be some fruit for testing in the future.
Nice, nice, nice. Yeah, hopefully the heat accumulation really gets up there for you guys, and then especially for the one at Door County, and then I think the fruit will really be showing the fullness of the flavors.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's hope we have a good year for the table grapes this year. We might not have hopefully so much rain. So I don't see any questions that anybody has typed on the chat, but I have more questions. And so some of the questions that I have is regarding some of the research that you're doing right now, and it has to do with. I saw that you listed that you had a couple of grants looking at trellis for the seedless table grapes, but also the use of plant growth regulators for fruit size, I assume. So can you tell us a little bit about, what specifically you're researching, and what have you seen so far?
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, so a couple of elements here. The first one is in terms of the trellis systems. We know, for example, that a vast majority of the vines that are grown in the upper Midwest relies on the high wire cordon and VSP. And that's mostly true for wine grapes, and it's still true for us when it comes to the table grapes that we are testing. But we are also quite keen on understanding, is that actually the best way to move forward? Because we know that table grapes really needs a lot of heat accumulation and also sunlight penetrance. And so we are curious and see how these grapes may perform when we do it on a three-dimensional structure. So we actually wrote in a grant that we want to test both the existing two-dimensional structure and also three-dimensional structure. So that's something that is happening right now. And then for the testing of the chemical effects on the fruit quality, so that will be exactly, you're right, is the plant growth regulator. We're doing gibberellic acid. We're looking at berry qualities and also cluster architecture, whether or not it would change some of these components. We actually collect almost over 20 different traits, and we are looking at various things, even something like pedestal length, and
Mm-hmm.
even something like the uh, the integrity of the berry itself, and also whether or not the seed size would be reduced, whether or not the berry diameter would be reduced or increased, and then the cluster density. And so we're capturing all this information. And I would say that we have collected in our year one, we completed year one of field trial for this particular GA experiment. We are already seeing the effects on this. And we see effects coming for the berry diameter. We see effect coming from cluster weight. We see effect coming for the the berry integrity, the texture
Mhm.
of the berry. And these are the three that are at the forefront of my head that I remember presenting at the departmental seminar, that we already see significance in that regard. And now we are just curious to test it for one more year in the field. And we also are doing the work in the greenhouse just to see whether or not we see a differential if effect when we do it in the greenhouse. Because one thing that we can do differently in the greenhouse is that the environment can be even more controlled. And
Yeah,
so we are looking at it from a greenhouse and also looking at it in a few in fact. But so far it's really showing us the significance. Yeah.
that's great. That's really good to know, because that's some of the things that we were thinking the same way. Like, as we've been growing here in Madison for a while now, we've realized that at least when we grow them in high corn, the importance of doing leaf removal around the clusters so that you can get that sunlight and so that you
That's
can
right.
get that accumulations of sugars. It's really important. If you have a very shaded canopy, then they just the ripening is not homogeneous, and that could potentially, I mean, that is a problem, because you want those stable grapes, those clusters, to be as homogeneous as possible when you're harvesting them. So
Absolutely.
so that's definitely something. Again, I don't see any other questions, but I have another question just to keep the conversation going. And this is my last question that I have, and it's about disease resistance. I mean, this has been a big issue for our wine grape growers here in Wisconsin. And so when thinking about these new releases, how much of some of these new technologies that you talked about, those DNA markers to identify individuals early on that might be resistant to some of these diseases, such as powdery mildew. I mean, black rot is something that we struggle with quite a bit here. So these new releases, would they be tested through those markers, or that's something that might come down the pipeline in a couple of years from now?
Yeah, so the comments that I had on the slides itself went for these three in terms of the minimal diseases, they actually are correct for these three, and both phenotypically, what we have collected of a phenotypic data over the years, and also correct when it comes to using the DNA markers technology. We've also seen that these different new releases also have the favorable genetic copies in them. Of course, the one thing that I would preface is that when we have such a difficult year like last year, I mean, it's virtually impossible to say that you
Mhm.
can get away without spraying. So our
Yeah,
recommendation ultimately still comes down to that. It's really important for the growers to really pay careful attention to their vineyard and making sure that it's not a bad idea to do some of this preemptive spray to make sure that you are not totally caught at the back foot, because when you get such a torrential rain like last year, it's almost impossible to protect it against all kinds of diseases. And so yeah, I think the short answer is that these individuals, these three varieties have the right combination of genetics, but it's still important for the growers to stay on top of it in terms of thinking about integrated pest management, thinking about doing some preemptive spray, and really not trying to push the genetics all the way to end, because once the resistance have been overcome, it's even more difficult to really try to rectify it. So yeah, good
perfect.
question.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, since everybody seems to be very shy today in this webinar, we don't have any more questions. Just going to give a couple more minutes to see if somebody else has any questions.
Yeah.
But I'm just post again. I think I put it in the chat there, but everybody to see that if you want to go back and revisit the webinar, the recordings are here. We also have the recordings of some of the other webinars that we have had this spring, but also from previous years. You can find on our YouTube channel. You can find a lot of those webinars. Well, I guess this with that we're gonna just end our webinar for today. I just want to say thank you so much to Lee for a really informative and exciting webinar about this new seedless table grapes and potentially new wine grapes that are coming out of your program. We are looking forward to have those releases and get people to start growing them.
Amaya, thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you for your kind words. And I still need to visit your program. I have a background.
Whenever you want to come, you
Okay.
definitely need to come and visit us.
Yeah. Yeah, I certainly need to visit you. Yeah. So, I used to do my undergraduate at UW-Madison, so it would be really good
What?
to
You're a
visit.
former bachelor. We didn't know that.
Yeah, yes. So
Good,
yeah,
good,
so thank
good.
you so much for the opportunity. And folks, I just want to put it out here. I intentionally have this as my final slide. So really, if you have any questions, just feel free to shoot me an email. I try to be responsive and open to any collaborations, whether you're a researcher or you're a grower itself. So thank you so much, everyone.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Bye
Josie,
bye.
if you wanna stop